And we're glad that you're joining us for Real Questions, part of our HeartChangeU live stream series. On Tuesdays, we do the questions. And again, Kimberly had a family emergency, and so she's not able to join us. But Rebecca's becoming a regular.
Here I am.
It's great to have you.
Thank you. Good to be here.
And it is fun.
Is.
It's fun to watch you relax a little bit more.
Yes.
Maybe still a little tightness there.
A little more every time.
But to see you just relax and be able to jump in. And
Yeah.
I loved when we were talking about real questions. You were like, oh, that would be fun.
Yeah.
I have all kinds of questions to ask.
Oh,
So,
but like actual time with pastor to like ask questions, it's amazing.
and,
so.
and you get to do it on air.
On air, you know.
So it's all good. Well, you had one for me today. I did get, just for the viewer, I did get a quick preview, so I had 3-4 minutes of warning on this one, and I kidded with her and said, no, not that one. That's too hard. But at any rate, I'll let you go ahead and share what you had today.
So my question is on masking.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we draw the line of like when we're looking at ourselves of am I masking? Am I learning to behave? Am I a grown up now? Like those
Mm-hmm.
type of things. Where how do we distinguish those things?
Well, let's just start with the term masking, because when you say masking, I actually don't go anywhere where you just went with your question when you were doing the comparison. Masking is typically when, and I'm going to kind of slow down a little bit, there's intentional and unintentional. But we'll start with intentional. When I'm intentionally going one place with a performance, with something on the outside to try to hide something that's on the inside. I mean, that's the classic definition of masking. You could look at a secondary definition where I'm unintentionally masking.
Mm-hmm.
And all of us do that all of the time.
Right.
We have this view of ourselves that is not accurate, and so really almost all the time there's something coming out on the outside that we may or may not be aware of in terms of the inside. And so when you're talking about that, again, I don't necessarily think of masking. So in terms of the classic definition of masking, I would say no, when I'm becoming an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, I like to use the term adulting. When I'm beginning to grow up at a level where I'm not just responding with my first impulse.
Yeah.
To me, that's not masking. That's a complete different situation where I'm critically making choices
Mm-hmm.
over what's good for other people. Now, that would be more in the adult end. What would be more in the masking end would be if I'm over here going, wow, if I say this person will say that, and I don't want that response, and I want to manipulate this person, or whatever other language you want to do, then you say, okay, that could be masking. But all of us need to manage our own behavior as we're growing, towards Christ, towards maturity, towards being an adult. I just don't see those as the same thing.
Okay.
We all do ego adjustments, I'm going to call them, everywhere, all the time, that are evaluating the other person and saying, I wonder how that person will respond to this.
Right.
Oh, that person will not respond well to this.
Yeah.
So therefore, let me say it this way. I think a lot of it comes back to what I first started talking about is blindness. Mm-hmm. Intentionally masking, and with the word masking, deceiving for wrong motives. Now I'm really getting into masking versus intentionally caring about someone, where it's like, if I say this way, that's not going to be good. And so I slow it down. I approach it with more skill. I choose a right timing. Those are all actually healthy communication pieces, and I would not call those masking.
So then it's depending on where the heart is and where we could check in with our spirit too, and that would be a good way to distinguish it.
Motive is the big piece.
Yeah.
if you really are in Christ and you're staying where you need to be and doing what you need to do in that, again, you have to manage your communications.
Right.
And there's good timings, bad timings, good presentations, bad presentations. So all of that matters, and I think that's where you're at. You're hyperactive on the perfectionism, guilt end, and so it's like, oh, well, I can't do that. I've got to present my real self. I've got to present everything there, and so if I'm not being 100% real all the time, no, there's real life here.
Yes.
And you have to do real life.
It's messy.
It is very messy. Well, what else do you have? More on the same area, or do you want to jump into a different area?
I think a different area. I think that was a good explanation of those things. What are key markers of codependency?
Oh,
such a big topic.
Well, the language that I go back to is need to. Want to is healthy.
Okay.
In other words, we all, as human beings, good human beings, should want good outcomes in the other person, and that's appropriate. And so if you're working with an addict or whatever, the want to is absolutely fine. But it's when it moves from want to need to, and again, even that can get confused.
Like the need, like I need to for my value.
Exactly.
Okay.
You're right on. Because if you're married and your spouse is in an addiction or whatever, need to fits that to where I need to do X, Y, or Z. I'm not talking about that kind of need to. I'm talking about you're with a codependent. I'm wanting them to get better, good. But I'm with a codependent. I'm needing them to get better, not just for my own health. I mean, obviously, if you've got a spouse that's in addiction or is abusive or et cetera, I need them to get better. That's very real.
Yeah.
That's not the need to I'm talking about. It's the need to in terms of I can't feel good about me unless you hear what I'm saying, receive what I'm bringing to where you come out of your addiction. I need you to get better because I can't feel good about me unless or until you actually get better.
Right.
Now we became codependent.
Okay.
And that need to language. And again, there's all kinds of other markers that are there. But to me, that's the simplest and most powerful. When I begin to realize I need this person to respond differently to feel good about me, not I need to for my life to have some semblance of order or health to it.
Right.
That's all of us as human beings.
Right. Okay. That's good. How about how do we love someone without enabling them? I mean, does it go back to the help part? You know, if I'm helping them because my part needs them to get to a certain stage so that I feel okay with me, is that the enabling part versus, you know, because if I'm letting my, you know, whoever be homeless because of their choices or whatnot, but I can't handle that because then it would look bad on me, then that would be enabling if I undo that, kind of.
Yeah, and as you're describing that goes back to the need piece. I'm going to go a little bit different direction for a moment, which is just vision. A lot of times people enable because they see things within a certain box and just success or failure. What I'm going to take it back to in Christ, we call it heart change, character change, growing up. I believe that the number one issue in all of our lives is that growth, that character change, getting to be a better person. So often, let's just say businesses. What is it? Like 90% of small businesses fail or whatever. Some statistic. I mean, the percentage is incredibly high. So if I jump out as a first-time business owner and I get out there and I fail, a lot of times we would be in that situation and we'd be going, oh, wow, you know, and if that person is married to someone who is codependent or who is enabling at some point, let's just say they had a parent or they had somebody there, maybe that person comes alongside and helps them in ways to make them succeed, but doesn't bring the character change, doesn't bring the work ethic change, doesn't bring the integrity change, doesn't confront what really needs to be confronted in order to grow, in order to get where that person needs to be. And I think that's a huge starting point. And again, that's part of why we emphasize the term heart change as much as we do. When you actually get back to the person themselves and the person themselves growing and doing the next right thing and doing what they need to do and staying in that area of integrity, if you're paying attention to that, it's virtually impossible to enable someone. So think about your kids for a moment. You know, if you're thinking from that point of view and you're thinking about, okay, I need to grow this kid into an adult. Well, at that point, no, I'm not making that bed for my child.
Right.
Or
laundry.
At some point, you know, we joke, my wife and I wanted, we really didn't want our kids in babysitting over major parts of the area. So one of the ways that we handled that, she worked evenings, I worked daytimes. And so let's just say I wasn't necessarily the best at meals. I was doing good when we got married to know how to boil water. Yeah. And I could, you know, there really wasn't much that I could do. Now, I had learned a few things. So the kids come along, and I'm supposed to be taking care of the kids at this point. Well, the kids got tired of Hamburger Helper and a few other things like that I did. And so somewhere along the line, we joke about it that my kids, and especially my daughter, who is the oldest, she learned how to cook just for survival.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times enablers mean well. They are trying to give their kids a good life, or they're trying to give whoever it is a good life. But when you step back from that and you start focusing on the person and them growing and them growing into different places, it's just incredibly powerful. And I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice I would have is start seeing the person, start growing the person, getting heart change, building skills in people. If you teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime. Those kinds of thoughts are really powerful. And if you stay in those areas, I think you stay out of that area of enabling.
Okay. And so then it's a time, time has to be factored, so that you can see consistency?
Well, you have to be age specific, or you have to be ability specific. And if you're an enabler, I would assume that you have a tendency to want to come alongside to help, to nurture. If you're going to do that, you kind of need to know the growth steps. You need to know, okay, at this age or at this point, this would be helpful. But then it's time to phase that out and allow that person to step into that role. Okay. And I think task analysis, a lot of times it's like, okay, in order for them to be successful, there's 10 things that need to happen. Right now they can handle 7, but they can't handle the other 3. So if they can't handle the other 3, I'll jump in and I'll do the other 3. But let's work on, okay, let's get number 8 going. Let's get number 9 going. Let's get number 10 going. A lot of times people don't do that. And frankly, a lot of times your more servant personalities are just quick to jump in and take over. And it's just easier. It's faster. It's more efficient. It's frustrating to watch you work through this. Well, if the person never works through it, they never get better.
Right.
I think that's one of the things, one of the one-liners I use is, if it don't show up, you won't grow up.
Yeah.
And another one is fail forward.
Yes.
You put those together, you've got to allow people to walk through that. You've got to allow them to take those kind of steps. If they don't grow, and they stay a child. They stay with a heart that lacks integrity.
Yeah.
Well, you've hit me with some questions. We were trying to keep things a little bit shorter today. So any other comments you want to make before we send it out of here? Well, again, thank you for joining us, and thank you for joining us. If you have questions, please send them in. As they come in, those will be the questions that will be priority, and we will answer those on Real Questions. And thank you for joining us. Pass it on to whoever you think really would benefit from these questions and answers. And we'll see you next time on Heart Change You live stream.